In this video, I'm building custom Elemental Power Mechs for every member of the Forbidden Five, and make sure to stay tuned for my absolute favorite one at the end. This is Noct, and this is his sister, Rox, and these are their teammates, Kerr, Drix, and Zarkt. Together they make up the Forbidden Five, the villains of Ninjago Dragons Rising Season 3. They were first teased in Season 2, and they were built up to be these super cool villains. Evil elemental masters with dark powers and a very dangerous threat to the ninja. But when they finally appeared in Season 3, they were underwhelming. They had great designs, don't get me wrong, but not a ton of screen time, and they were much bigger frauds than we expected. Worst of all, though, we never got to see some of their elemental powers in the show. They just shot these vague blasts of energy. Now, I have a series on this channel where I build custom Elemental Power Mechs for Ninjago characters who don't have them yet. This is to match the official mechs for Cole, Kai, Sora, Lloyd, and Aaron. Each of these mechs have the character's element flowing through it, but there's not really matching mechs for the villains. So, with an evil team of elemental masters, I thought this was the perfect chance to make some evil elemental power mechs. However, since we barely saw their elemental powers, I had to improvise a bit and come up with fun ways to represent them. You guys know the deal by now, so let's hop straight into it, and we'll begin with the biggest fraud of them all, Zarkt. Zarkt is the Master of Misfortune, and we never really saw his power in the show. He shot one blast that made a car break down, and that's kinda it. However, his minifigure design is super cool. He's got these gold chains all over, locking in these purple tendrils inside of his robes. Personally, I see that as the misfortune power trying to escape, so let's bring that over into his mech. I use dark green as the main color, with more black towards the center. There's chains all over this build, on the legs, wrapping around the cockpit, and then these purple tendrils on the arms that have more chains wrapped around them. Those tendrils are meant to be that misfortune power, but they're being held back by the gold. I tried to give the mech a flowy, robe-like appearance to match the minifigure, and this printed lock piece in the center of the chest fits Zarkt perfectly. Now, when I was designing this, I did it digitally, and I forgot that Zarkt wasn't a normal-shaped minifigure due to his robe. That was very, unfortunate. So let's put him into some comfy pants instead to pilot the mech. It's still a bit of a tight fit with his helmet, but it'll have to do, and he can't see his legs when he's in the mech. Finally, to finish this one off, I created a chain weapon for him, similar to the one on my custom Dark J mech, since that's one of my favorites that I've done. This one, though, has a bionicle blade piece at the end to match Zark's minifigure weapon. I should also point out that the cockpit here is pretty much stuck shut due to the chains, but considering Zark's whole thing is being locked up by those chains, I think it works for him. Overall, I think this one turned out super cool. It fits Zark's vibe and captures the idea of misfortune as well as I think it could have. Next up is Drix, the Elemental Master of Swarm. This guy is easily the coolest one in the show, and we do actually see his powers. He can turn into bugs. Now, I immediately knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to cover the mech in Lego bugs. And in terms of bug pieces, there was really only 3 options. Lego has 2 different versions of the spider, and then there's also an ant mold. There is a couple other Lego bugs, like the ladybug, but they're much cuter, so it doesn't really fit the evil vibe of this mech. Drix, of course, would use a red and black color scheme, but when I started designing this, I realized something. Spiders, red and black color scheme. This was on track to look like a Spider-Man mech, specifically for Miles Morales. Now, I just did a video like 3 weeks ago where I made a Spider-Man mech, and I didn't want to just do the same thing for Drix, so I tried to avoid the Spider-Man feel as best as I could. I stuck to dark red without any normal red to avoid the Miles color scheme, and I wanted to put a bug in the center of the chest, so I specifically decided to use an ant instead of a spider. When I was first coming up with this mech, I did have the idea to cover it in webs, but when I made that Spider-Man connection, I decided against it, because webs would definitely give off that feel. Instead, for texturing, I used layered pointed slope parts. This is to match Drix's exoskeleton that we could see bursting out of his chest. I think this looks especially cool on the legs, but that bug-like body is all over. Of course, there's still plenty of ants and spiders everywhere too, even on the back, to show Drix's powers. Since Drix is such a unique character though, I wanted to do a bit more. So I gave him these really unique feet with spikes on the end that, at least to me, sort of looked like skates. It makes the mech seem very agile when posing, and then at the back of the mech I added a little stinger because, come on, Drix is a bug. Finally, I built him two scythes for weapons, once again to match what his minifigure comes with. This mech also turned out awesome. I'm still not 100% on the feet choice, but I love pretty much everything else, especially that spiky exoskeleton all over. And the use of the bugs to be his elemental power is just sick. After Drix, we have Kerr, the Elemental Master of Decay, another power that we did see in the show. Now, Kerr is a tough one because she has a wacky color scheme. Brown, dark red, burnt orange, tan, and sand green. Amazing minifigure, but none of these colors are super common for mechs. So the common parts I used, like the arms and the cockpits, did not exist in any of these colors. I even looked at the LEGO Marvel mech cockpits and once again nothing. So I had to get a little creative with it. I decided on dark green for the joints because they were close enough to the sand green, and I feel like they match the idea of decay. For the cockpit, I did actually go with the LEGO Marvel style. While I'm not a fan of this part, it is smaller than the Ninjago style cockpit, and to represent Kerr's element, I did want the mech to look like it was decaying and to have it physically smaller than the others. So here's what I put together. The legs give off this like baggy pants look with grill pieces to be little tears, exposing the decay power underneath in sand green. There's lots of sand green studs all over too, which is something that looks kinda gross and that I would typically avoid, but I purposefully made parts of this mech a little barren and ugly to give that decaying feel. Just like Kerr's minifigure, one side of the mech is covered in wraps and the other is in orange clothing. I used tan for the wraps and made them look like they're draping down. On the other side, things are a bit more covered up with this nice orange sleeve, and both arms have brown shoulder pads. At the ends of the hands, there's spring green claws, and that's how Kerr can use her powers within the mech. If she manages to scratch something with the mech, the decay will pass on to them. There is only 3 fingers on these hands as opposed to the 4 that you're going to see on the Wolf sibling mechs in a moment, but that was intentional. I wanted Kerr's mech to be different from those two, and because Kerr is decaying, her mech should have less. Funny thing about this mech, I think Kerr's powers affected me while building because 2 different parts just completely broke while I was trying to put it together. It was the joint part at the waist and one of them at the feet. So the waist was supposed to be dark brown, but I had to replace it with black because I didn't have any more copies of this part in dark brown, but luckily I did have an extra of the foot, so that could stay the color it was supposed to be. Overall, this is definitely the mech that I'm the least confident in, but I think I pulled it off. Working with an unconventional color scheme using only existing parts is always tough, but Decay was a fun power to represent, and I think I did a pretty good job. Now we have 2 mechs left, but before we get to them, uh-oh, I've been captured by the Forbidden Five. Apparently Zark here is threatening to misfortune me, whatever that means. I think he's just upset that I called him a fraud. So quick, before that happens, make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. No, but in all sincerity, liking and subscribing does a ton to help support me in the channel and also helps YouTube to show you my videos more often. And hey, while we're here, why don't you let me know in the comments, which characters should I make Elemental Power Mechs for next? Should I get to the Dragon's Rising characters I haven't yet, such as Frack, Geo, and maybe even Rogue or Moro? Or should I go back and do more classic characters like Garmadon, the Time Twins, or I guess also Moro? Let me know in the comments, and whatever is the most popular is what I'll start working on next. But now, with all of that said, let's get into the final two mechs. I left these two for last because they match. It's the wolf siblings, Rox and Noct. Noct is the master of brute force, which we never saw in the show outside of vague power blasts. The idea of brute force is hard to represent in a mech, so I basically just tried to make his mech look powerful. For aesthetics though, I pulled from the fact that Noct is a wolf, so I gave it some canine features. He's got big feet with claws, and claws coming off the hands too. The hands are actually posable on this mech, which they are not on the official mechs, because I thought that would be a cool way to make him unique, and it makes him a bit more agile too. He can actually hit punches. Black is of course the main color used here, with a few touches of blue fur. This fur is lighter than what Noct has, but it's close enough to work. I intentionally left some gap here areas in the mech too, such as this hole in the leg, and that's to match how tattered the Forbidden Five's robes are, and to give a somewhat unsettling feel to the mech. It's not made to be as pretty and pristine as the ninja's mechs. The torso of Noct's mech has his hat in the center, which I think is cute, but my personal favorite detail is the little paw pads that I put in his hands. To finish it off, I made Noct a little sword to somewhat match the prismatic blades. It's nothing too special, but it fits him. Noct was definitely a tough one to come up with ideas for, but leaning into the wolf idea, I think worked really well. This mech definitely feels very evil, which is the vibe that I wanted. And now, last up, to end things off, we have Rox, the Elemental Master of Fear. This is probably the biggest missed potential of the entire show. Fear is such a cool idea for an elemental power, and we just never saw it used. So I thought to myself, how do I make an elemental power mech infused with fear? I decided to ditch the iconic cockpit part and instead make a giant version of Rox's mask. This looked sick and definitely gives the mech an ominous vibe. I gave the mech shorter legs to match Rox herself, and just like Noct, there's some fur peeking out since they're both wolves, though in Rox's case it's in bright orange. The feet here are very similar to Noct's mech, there's some slightly different texturing and the claws are brown. And same thing with the arms, they're not exactly the same, but it has a lot of the same ideas with the fur peeking out from underneath. However, the hands are actually different. They might look the same, but they're actually built upside down. And that's because we're not done with the element of fear just yet. If we lift this hand up, you can see there is eyes inside of the hands. So if the mech holds both of its arms up, with the cockpit it creates a whole face. The inspiration here is how a lot of animals in nature have patterns that look like faces to scare away predators, so this is sort of taking that idea to the extreme. And because the eyes are on the hands, there's a lot you can do with them. You can use the fingers to change the expression, you can give it eyelashes like this or very angry eyebrows if you turn the hands in, and they have 360 movement too, so Rox can use the mech to look behind her while she's facing forward. The arms are individually posable too, so you could be attacking with one and looking around with the other, and because the arms are so long, the hands are individually posable and the legs are so short, this mech can run around on all fours just like a wolf. I think this is one of the most creative mechs I've ever done, and I am so happy with it. I wasn't sure what to do with Fear, but I think this was the best result possible. It just turned out amazing. But there we go, it has finally been done. That is custom mechs for every member of the Forbidden Five. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of these? Which one is your favorite? If you missed it, as I mentioned earlier in this video, a couple weeks ago I did a Ninjago and Spider-Man crossover building challenge. That one turned out pretty cool, so go check it out on the channel if you haven't yet. And if you want to see that video and more custom build videos just like this one, I will have a full playlist linked in the description below. I've made plenty of other mechs just like this. one for all of the ninja who didn't get a mech, for a couple of side characters who didn't get mechs, and for other villains who didn't get mechs, such as Lord Raz. But yeah, there's a whole playlist of like 50 videos, so go check those out. If you haven't yet, tons of fun stuff in there. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on it, subscribe to my channel if you're new, and let me know in the comments which custom build video do you want to see next. But as for this one, I think that's about all I have to say, so thanks for watching everybody.